You're listening to The Real Estate Ride. Make sure to subscribe and enjoy the show.
People like Terry Summers or people like heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Wholesalers who start off wholesalers. And I say, well, how'd you get the business? I did the bandit side.
Yep.
Well, what would you do after that? I didn't do anything else. Or you didn't have a follow-up. The problem with what people are doing is you have a one touch, but that follow-up system after that is what people are missing that'll get them to buy some property for you. So as a newbie, or as a new person to investing or a smaller investor like me, understand that, number one, use your resources.
Absolutely.
Know you, hey, who's having issues? Or, I, being from the West Side, I have 10 people I could call and say, hey, who do you know that's back on a payment or something?
Yep.
Because that's where I grew up at. So use your resources, use your here.
Hey, welcome to the Real Estate Ride podcast.
We have a special guest with us today in-house. Her name is Stephanie O'Brien, and she is a marketing genius,
That's right.
as well as been in real estate for many, many years, like us.
25 years.
So we are going to talk to her about how to find
Your first
or your next.
Flip or just property.
or rental or whatever you want to do with it. But this is going to be focused on finding off-market deals in the best pricing for that, like the low-hanging fruit, as Stephanie said before we started.
Gonna grab my.
So, we have worked with Stephanie for, I was going to say over a decade.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
And she really is the lead gen queen. So she knows so many different ways to find deals. And a lot of that is because of her extensive background in title.
Yes. So you have been local to the Columbus area market for as long as you've been on your players.
Yeah. I started in the title business in 2000, and I started the marketing department for title companies. So my expertise goes back right about 25 years.
Nice.
Now, did you do anything in real estate before you started title?
Before I started title, my first job was in the telemarketing department at Randall Mortgage. So I was a telemarketer for a mortgage company, which is where I first learned about leads, good and bad leads. And then I became a loan officer for about a year. Didn't sell anything, but I became a loan officer. And then I found my first love, which is real estate marketing and real estate farming and marketing. Farming is pulling addresses. And then I fell in love with the game of how to find the best, most inexpensive distressed properties, the best way to farm for it, the most inexpensive ways to market to it. And I took that and expanded on it in the last 25 years.
Awesome.
That is so awesome. And you actually, before we get into like the lead gen stuff, you've actually invested yourself in real estate. Like when did you do your first real estate deal?
That's funny you asked, Jay. People in real estate think you have to be 20 or 25 to do your first deal. And if you either are an addict or something, a lot of people think that it's game over. Well, I bought my first property that I've sold in about 2 years. I bought that with a 560 credit score. Wow. On an FHAs. I was about 3 months sober. And yeah, thank you. So I was about 3 months sober.
A few more years now.
Yeah, 12 and a half years now. But
Awesome.
I was about 3 months sober, and somebody said, did you know you could buy a house? I'm like, there's no way. I've got a 560 credit score. He said, Stephanie, you might not talk to me after the process, and you might kill a permit process with the car. So I found a house on the West Side that was a rental.
Nice.
And I knew that a lot of the rentals, especially back in it was like 2013.
Yeah.
So it was about 6 months after I got sober. But I know back then even the rentals, this was a four bedroom, 2.5 bath on the West Side of Columbus on a cul-de-sac lot for $130,000. So I bought that house. And like I said, I bought it FHA. I kept it for 2 years. Then I had my daughter.
Yes.
Then I got married and I got divorced. So I only put about $7,000 into that house, and I turned around and flipped it for, I think I made $40,000 off that one. I bought it for $126,900 and I sold it for $199,000.
And you said that you kept it for 2 years. Is there a reason you kept it for 2 years?
FHA, with FHA, a lot of the first time home buyer programs, and they're owner occupied. They want you to occupy it for at least a year or two.
Yep.
So I occupied it for 2 years. And also, if you're in a property for 2 years, and you get less than $500,000, my title side coming out, you get less than $500,000 on your $500,000 as a married couple, $250,000 as a single person. You don't have to pay capital gains taxes.
All right.
So I took the money from that house and I bought a condo.
Nice.
And the condo that I bought was a rental as well.
Awesome.
That is what we call the slow flip. And we were just discussing this with someone else. Like, there's a large percentage of people, investors, that only own 2 houses. And
Yeah, that was crazy. We were on a coaching call this morning and Jay had mentioned that.
yeah,
It seems very bizarre to me that out of all of the country, there's some most real estate investors own 2 rentals.
yeah. And what we were discussing was, we bet, we don't have any data on this, but we bet that a large majority of those people bought the first house and lived there and then decided they wanted to upgrade or move sideways or move down or over or something like that, to that, move to a different state even. And so we believe that many people have started with a primary residence and then either sold it or turned it into a rental. So that is a great tip. If you're looking to get started in real estate, you can buy a house with an FHA loan, and they even have grant money available. Now there's more years added, like if you sell it before the grant agreement is up. So most grants have, like, say, the majority have like a 7-year
7 years.
tiered payoff, where if they gave you grant money for your down payment, you have to pay it back in a certain percentage if you don't hold it for 7 years. But that is a great way if you're looking to get started and do the slow flip. Buy with a FHA loan, and you can buy a property basically with no money down.
It's funny you mentioned the 2 property, because I met a realtor last week who I had lunch with that he just bought his second home, which he wants to be his forever home. And he decided to rent out the first one. He said he's got a great renter. He's making $600 a month off of it because of how rents have gotten.
Yeah.
But another good thing to do, which I've had a lot of people do, is buy a duplex. You can get FHA
Yes.
up to a 4-plex until it's right?
Yeah,
right?
4-plex. Yeah, 4 units.
So
Yep.
you do something like that, you get an FHA, you live on one side, you rent out the other, and then your tenant is paying your mortgage. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. But I think for me, what I learned when I found the properties were I used the same techniques I would use for an investor. Was, okay, it was a rental. Rentals have just a lot of or a lot of paint slapped on the walls. Now, here you
Yeah.
So I took that, and just by adding, new, I added laminate floors, I added, paint, and you mean like more of the make it look homey. I mean, that thing, I sold that one for I bought it for $89,000. I sold it for $160,000. So it's
Nice.
what people don't realize is it's not about the amount of the house. It's about, where it's located and how probable it is going to sell. So in each of the houses that I've flipped, and people have to understand your first flip, you're always not going to make the most money off of. I call it the rollover flip. Second flip, then I get equity. Third flip, then my fourth flip was when I made the most money.
Yeah.
Then I decided I didn't want to own for a while. So burn out. But
No, yeah.
what people need to realize is, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there. So we talk about the tired landlord. Jay knows about this very well, because so years ago where Jay got 4 listings.
Right.
And those were all absentee out-of-state owners. So these people they're tired. They're in their 60s and their 70s. They probably don't have a good property management company. They need to talk to them. There's your plug. But that stuff, people don't realize that, a lot of that, they'll either sell as a portfolio. If they sell them one by one, they're going to sell them for a lot more. But if you buy maybe 1 or 2 or not all of them, they'll lower the price a little bit. A lot that, and another one is the vacants. A lot of the vacant properties, people might not know, there are over 5,000 vacant properties in Central Ohio. 5,000. That's in Columbus alone.
Yes. So absentee owner, just so everyone knows, means they don't live there. And vacant means they don't live there and no one else does either.
So look at these vacant properties. You got 5,000 properties, right? Nobody's living in these. Nobody's living in them. So a lot of these investors, then we had one that we couldn't close last month because of an environmental lien. So a lot of have open environmental cases or lesbian liens or anything like that. So I probably said that wrong. But like these environmental liens with the overgrown grass and stuff, a lot of those people don't want to touch because of it. But those are a lot of low-hanging fruits.
Yeah, those are the ones we love, where the grass is knee-high and the crystals are still on in July.
Now, some people are doing that year-round now with the Christmas lights.
But typically, if the grass is high and there's Christmas lights, or there's broken or boarded up windows, those are the ones that we like, because there are a lot of investors that like the pretty houses and they don't want to do the work. They don't have the knowledge to do the work, whatever the case may be. So the low-hanging fruit is what we like. Yeah. The uglier, the better. Yeah.
I think to add on to what Annie just said is that a lot of these investors, for the newer investors, understand a lot of these hedge fund guys are a lot of investors, larger investors, such as big guys like Camelot, people that own 100 or 50 properties, or Jay and Amy that own a lot of properties. But when you start, you have to think a little bit outside the box, because if you think about all these, minus Jay and Annie who are outside the box, a lot of these investors have the same. A lot of the investors I work with have the same buy box. But what a buy box is, what they're looking for. I want it built after 1970. What, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. No issues with the foundation, which Jay loves. Shack it up. But all those. That's what all the cookie cutter investors are doing.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's what everybody is looking for. All of the real estate investors, or those that classify themselves as real estate investors, don't want to work on the ones that we like to work on, because we have a construction background. We have a construction crew. Not all investors have that. So they are looking for the 3-bedroom, 2-bath that just needs some paint on the walls or some flooring put in. And then that's when investors start coming to us like, we can't find any deals. Can you help us find some deals? And then we talk to staff who then tells us there are 500 or 5,000 empty properties in Central Ohio alone. And then that's when we start getting into the buy boxes of other people, meaning what they're looking for and how we can help them find a property when there are no properties available.
Another thing that people don't think about are HOA liens. So I have a client of mine who is a broker in Columbus that bought a house in Hoffman Farms. Hoffman Farms, if you know Hoffman Farms in Hilliard, it goes for $450,000. She bought it for $280,000. This was in 2022, which was really the height of COVID. Yeah. She bought it because the HOA foreclosed upon it because of HOA dues. Yeah. So you see that a lot. And a lot of people are like, well, so what you want to realize when you're looking for distressed properties, the oversaturated ones, pre-foreclosure. By the time pre-foreclosure hits, a lot of the database companies where us as title companies or investors pull our data, you're out 3 months. Just like probate, right? Yeah. Probate, you want to farm, which sounds terrible, affidavit of death more than you farm probate, because probate, again, you're 3 months out. You're already late. You're late. Because everybody's off at pre-foreclosure. You want to tweak it to more late on payments, which is a little bit tricky. You have to go by a simulation they do for credit cards rather than, you can't go to the credit bureau and say, hey, I want everybody late on payments because of the equal opportunity and equal housing. Yeah. Because they'll say, oh, that's a discriminate against credit.
That's illegal.
Yeah. But there are simulations of lists you can buy that show if you're 6 months late on a credit card, you're probably coming months late on your house payment, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
So those are, that's what I always tell people. If you want to, it's always a numbers game. You got to get to them first, and you got to give them the best exit strategy. So it's getting to the low hanging fruit and giving them an exit strategy, which I think that the housing, the HOA liens, or that is basically condo dues or HOA dues, homeowners association dues. Exactly. Close is another great thing that people always miss.
Yeah, for sure. So when we're looking for properties, we are looking for the, distressed properties, the rundown houses, the grass that's up to your knees or your waist or whatever. But we're also checking lists for property maintenance or environmental, like Stephanie mentioned earlier.
Code violations.
Which is a county department, and they literally go around looking for these houses that have code violations. So if there's a large amount of trash or debris, or if there's just
Over
a multitude of things, overgrown grass.
Yeah.
And
A lot of times it's neighbors calling. That's the majority. And it could, honestly, we ought to call on a rental about 5 twigs in the backyard.
it can literally be anything, like Day was saying. And it can also add up pretty quickly. We have a renter that had a parked vehicle, no tags, in their backyard.
And their
Dump
porch
truck,
was full of
and the
stuff.
porch was full, and they flagged them, and then they charged them $250. And if it went another month, it was another $250. And if it went another month, it was another $500. So things start adding up pretty quickly, to where if you are on a fixed income, or if you live paycheck to paycheck, which many, many people do in the United States these days, especially, then those fees add up quickly. They can't pay them. They get into a situation where they are screwed, pretty much.
And it happens a lot where someone has inherited a house, or they're elderly and they just don't have the means, the money, or the ability to do these repairs. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, as humans, we will just ignore problems. And then that problem gets, like Annie said, every month gets more and more expensive. Eventually, the city keeps racking it up, adding it to your tax bill, and then you can't pay your taxes, and now your property is getting sold at the tax sale.
Which is another way that we find properties.
Good lead in, right?
So back taxes, and oh shoot, there's another one. Yes.
have business loans. So another good lien, like Annie just mentioned, the tax liens. Think about the tax liens that you have to understand is they can foreclose at any amount that, you might think, well, they won't foreclose on that. I would guess again, and they're, a lot of the investors that I work with, especially in the smaller areas, as we know, Ohio, Columbus is very saturated, just like Miami, Fort Lauderdale. You go to the outlying areas, you don't have as many people, but if you go make friends with a lot of the code violations departments, they'll give you that, just like the a lot with like the pre-foreclosures and stuff, make friends with the county and we're in a smaller area.
Yeah, that's a great segue into the low-hanging fruit, right? And cheap or free leads. So a great way for free is you just, like the lady said, you go down to the county, ask them for the code violation list. Now, quite often it's in a weird format. But now with AI, you could load that list into AI and tell it exactly how you want it to spit it out organized, and it'll do it for you in a matter of a couple of minutes. Where just a couple of years ago, we had to hire a VA,
to separate it all,
a virtual assistant, to manually do that for us. So that's just one aspect, but Stephanie, you have a ton of experience in lead lists.
Oh,
like what, like when you say, I know there's 5,000 vacant properties, like how do you know that?
Yeah.
Tell us, Stephanie.
I will tell you. I will not tell
We're gonna pause for a minute.
people to understand is that how the most important thing about, before you even pull your data or you pull your leads, you have to understand where the leads come from. One thing that I learned a long time ago, and Jay and Annie have learned with trial and error, you don't understand where the leads come from, you don't understand what you're marketing to, you're not going to sell anything. So I'm all about the validity behind the data. So I'm going to talk for a minute about where the data comes from and how long it takes to get, I'm sorry. How long it takes to get to the database companies that sell it. So as you guys know, there's a recorder site and there's an auditor site. So when there's a lot like MLS, when there are sales, everything is entered and it's like funneled down into the auditor and the recorder. Well, when that happens, companies, underwriters like First American and Stewart, which are title company underwriters, they're the people that record and stamp the deeds and everything. Mm-hmm. So they're going to get to that information quicker. So when I farm for like affidavit of death or what's another one? Divorces, another good one. We can go down that later. But I pull that directly from theirs because there's other database companies that take 2 months for it to get to. Mm-hmm. And if you think about those 2 months, all the data is always being sold. Yeah. So you get the data from one website and you've got 25 other people that sell it a different way. So you've got all these different So I pull my 5,000, I pull from a distressed marketing, I'll tell people, the database called Connected Investors. Connected Investors is a social media platform and a farming tool for young investors. Young up-and-comers, even some of the big boys use it. But if you're an up-and-comer as a investor, you want to sign up for Connected Investors. It's free for the social media part because you can connect with other investors nationwide. If you have your first wholesale deal in Dayton, you can connect with investors in California, Arizona, Florida. Now, the farming part is very, very expensive, which I get 25,000 skip traces a month. So come to me for that.
Yeah. For sure.
There you go.
But what that does is it will skip trace. Skip traces when you pull cell phone numbers and email addresses, but be very, very careful with that. Anti-can spam act just came out.
Yeah, that's what I was just.
Yes.
Y'all don't need to be calling and emailing people all day long anymore. Somebody just got an $8,900. Let me say that again. $8,900 fee.
Fine.
Then it's fine.
For
$8,900 fine for sending one email out.
For somebody that wasn't supposed to get the email.
So when you do this, it is, so a lot of my stuff I do off social media now, which is a whole nother one. But the idea of you have to always double scrub it. Make sure they're not on the do not call list. Make sure they're not on do not text and email list because they're not playing around with this. They want everything to be opt-ins now too. So the day it's pulling a list, it's getting really, really weird for this year. And one thing I want people to understand, it's not going to be Jane and Annie Adkins who own 40 rentals that if you call them, they're going to say, we're going to sue you, $8,900 for calling it. No. Right. Think about it. It's going to be the housewives, in Columbus, in Cincinnati, anyway, where they're the ones that are bored and would love $8,900. So
yes,
be sure to follow those guidelines and don't just blast out to everybody anymore because that little $1,000 fine or $500 fine is a lot more.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
but the low hanging fruit, but there's other ways to, connect with people. Go drop off something. Go. And if you're like sending a letter or something, always send it to the tax mailing address. It's an absentee owner.
Yep.
So that's the owner of record. If you go to that county auditor site and pull up the property card, it's going to show you who the owner is, whether it's a person or an LLC or a trust even. However, they're holding title, and then they're going to have the mailing address of where the tax bill,
which is usually the owner.
Yeah, which is usually the owner's address. So that's a great tip.
Yeah, so that's so what I always tell people is now, we're all going into a whole different realm. Yeah, I had 14 backups. If they said, okay, make sure it's scrubbed about the do not call us, already did that. Do not mail us, already did that. The problem is now there's other things coming out that we don't really understand. I would just send an email to, like, if I want title business, I'll just send an email to a random realtor. Well, if that realtor doesn't like me, they can say, I didn't opt into Stephanie's email and I can show her. So when you do that, remember the stakes are a lot higher and really understand it because everybody's been fined, from Keller Williams to Remax to even the database companies that provide this information. So be very, very careful on what you're doing.
Now, you can take that list of the individuals' names, and it sounds like, Stephanie, you're getting emails and maybe phone numbers too. So you can also load those lists into Facebook, and you can say, hey, Facebook, I want to run ads to these people. And so that is a way for you to reach them. And if you have a sign, a digital sign on Facebook, and they're scrolling past it, you don't pay until they click it, but they're seeing your ad all of the time. And so when they're ready to click, they're already familiar with you. Yeah. Yeah. So you can have your little online billboard by running some Facebook ads.
Yeah, and even if you don't have money to run Facebook ads, like the pay-per-click thing, like Jay was saying, yes, you do get charged, but you don't get charged until they click. You can post, which we have found numerous deals this way, looking for a new deal, getting involved in real estate, who has a distressed property that they no longer are interested in, who wants to downsize, who wants to, move out of state, whatever the case may be. Literally just make a post on your Facebook wall that says, looking for a property, who's got one that I can buy in the next week or two.
Yeah.
And we've gotten several that way. But there's lots of different things.
Just
So
to kind of add what Jay and Annie does, because I manage a lot of, well, I do some a little bit still, but I managed a lot of marketing for a lot of investors and realtors, is number one, to talk about the Facebook, the email addresses. We can pull those email addresses for only 7 cents an email. So a lot of things that I'm doing now is doing a very targeted farming. For example, so I'll do, like, if you're looking for absentee out of state owners, I'll do absentee out of state and put all the, 2 bedrooms, 3 baths, whatever, price range. And then instead of pulling cell phone numbers and email addresses, you just pull those email addresses. And like Jay said, you can upload them into Facebook. And, minus Annie, we're all in our 50s here. So we're not. So we're my 50s and I teach AI, but most of my AI is very, very, I think Jay's better at AI than I, very, very abbreviated.
yeah, but I mean, along those same lines, abbreviated is good for
Yes.
I
So
don't know what they're doing, right?
What I mean by that is it's very user-friendly and simple. There's something called AdWorks, WEADWERX, that I used to push as a title company before this came out. And AdWorks, think about when you look at something, I look at a Louis Vuitton, all of a sudden I got 12 Louis Vuittons on. So it works a lot like that.
Yes.
If you remember something called Smart Zip in the day was you could buy the zip code and you would see everything on Facebook and they would do mailers for you.
Oh, that's right.
Remember that?
But that, but
I would always combat that by pulling the email lists, having them upload it, and then we just do a targeted mailer, and it mirrors it for pennies on the dollar. I mean, something like something like Smart Zip was like at $1,200 a month. I could redo that for like $200.
Wow.
So
That's a huge savings.
what I think about is there, even though we have more and more obstacle and offseeing whatever around it.
Yeah.
Another one people do is driving for dollars.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
The door, leave a business card, use bandit signs.
There are bandit signs, which are the little yellow or blue or whatever.
We buy houses.
We buy houses. You see those?
Cash for your house.
And
Those are bandit signs.
the best times to hand those out would be Friday morning because they clean them up, I think, on Sundays.
Yep.
But use those. I've talked to some of the people like Terry Summers or people like heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Wholesalers who start out wholesalers, and they say, well, how'd you get to business? I did the bandit sign.
Yep.
Well, what would you do after that? I didn't do anything else. Or you didn't have a follow-up. The problem with what people are doing is you have a one touch, but that follow-up system after that is what people are missing that'll get them to buy some property for you. So as a newbie, or as a new person to investing, or a smaller investor like me, understand that, number one, use your resources.
Absolutely.
Know you, hey, who's having issues? Or, I, being from the West Side, I have 10 people I could call and say, hey, who do you know that's back on a payment or something?
Yep.
Because that's where I grew up at. So use your resources, use your here. Another thing is, like Annie said, put it on social media. Hey, I manage marketing, like I said, for a lot of investors, including Jay and Annie.
Yep.
And what we would do is don't tell all my secrets. So, for example, I'm working with an investor right now of Indiana that builds 3-2 spec homes for $190,000. So we're trying to build private equity. So my low hanging fruit, inexpensive way to do it, because he doesn't have a $500 million budget.
Right.
I don't have any money. So
Right.
So what we did was we joined every investor group, every realtor group, every private capital group, every free group, real estate related that I can join in Indiana. So what I do is I create a Canva post, and to go one step further that I haven't figured out, which you guys will help me, is create a landing page.
Yep.
So you go on there and you go on different investor pages. That's free.
Yes.
And remember, a lot of these pages have 50, 60, 100,000 people.
Yes, a lot.
Lots
So,
of groups and things.
I've gotten a lot of traction that way. So every time I try to build a new marketing program for one of my newer investors or me or whoever's investing, I would be sure to join all the groups around there. Don't go stalker mode. Go in, maybe post once every other day.
Right. That's a good point, because Facebook will shut you down. The more groups that you're joining all in one day, and the more that you're putting yourself out there, they're like, it has to be spam. So they shut you down and lock your account. So make sure that you're staying within those guidelines. And it's different literally every day, I feel like, when you start.
Yeah.
I've heard to cap it at around 15 to 20
Day.
groups per day or people per day.
They don't tell you when you share, you're getting to your I think you can share to maybe 10.
Yeah.
But I've got my personal page that I've got 10,000, that I've got about 8,500 people on. I've got my professional page. And plus I have a group that I have 3,300 people in. So,
Nice.
I've built that over the years just by, I didn't spend any money to build any of my stuff I've done. I've just done it through joining all these other groups. So, you guys out there, remember, just because you don't have all this marketing dollars, everybody in 2025 is going back to the basics. With the spam and all this other crap, we're all going to have to go back. Letters are coming back. Mailers are coming back. Yellow letter with 3 sentences. I want to buy your house.
Yes.
Postcards. I'm sure a lot of people listening have gotten the letters, have gotten the postcards, have gotten have seen those bandit signs. You may or may not have gotten a door knocker. It just depends. Door knocking was big for a while, and then it became a safety issue for a minute, only because, there's lots of
If you're
safety
door knocking,
issues.
I
these days.
suggest you go in an area that you know and that you trust. Don't go door knocking in the ghetto of Cleveland or maybe Mike. And is that
Right.
not telling you to do that?
No, please do not.
And understand, a lot of the driving for dollars is just writing down vacant homes or writing down distressed properties or writing down if you see somebody's got, 4 broken down cars in the driveway. Those are driving for dollars. And a lot of times those are the best ways to get stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And understand that lead's just a lead. The low hanging fruit I like because I've flipped more of those. I think I've seen them flip over. And for people that don't have the money to do $10,000 a month in mailers, I think it's a little bit more time for you. Another thing they could do, like I did, was I hired a virtual assistant for $4 an hour.
Right.
And all of the work that I just said she does, except for the farming. Yeah. But she shares all my stuff. So if you can, I pay $80 every other week for my own virtual assistant, and I'll tell you, she's the one that built everything for me.
Well, that's a good point, because a lot of new people, especially newer investors or somebody that has been thinking about investing in real estate but may have 1 or 2 properties, and the cash flow is helping pay some of their bills or, getting them debt free or whatever the case may be, vacation money, whatever. They don't have a lot of money necessarily, but they have more time. Or it's the other way around, right? You have all this money in the bank that you've been saving and you don't have time to do it. So there's 2 different options. You can do a lot of stuff for free and use the time that you have to go and follow up and go driving for dollars and placing bandit signs and such. Or you can hire a virtual assistant if you have the money but don't have the time, that can do a lot of that stuff too. So there are a lot of people on virtual assistants right now that are from the Philippines and other countries, but they have very well-versed English vocabulary. You can talk on the phone with them and may or may not even know that they're not from the United States. So I know a lot of spam calls are happening, and a lot of people out there are turned off against non-English speaking as their first language people to deal with. But honestly, if you find a good VA, then there should be no issue. Their vocabulary is very well versed, especially if they've been trained at all in real estate. So then it just makes it a little bit easier, less money, like you said, than it would be for somebody in the States, and they know what they're supposed to be doing. Or you can tell them, no, that's not how I want you to do it. This is how I want you to do it, and give them a script and all kinds of stuff. So there are a multitude of ways to get involved in real estate for very little money or very little time. It just depends on what fits your lifestyle and your goals the best.
And just to kind of reiterate with the VAs, my VA is horrible at making phone calls. I've never had her make a phone call ever. And remember, the phone calls, like we talked about, might not be the main source now with all this anti-cams. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to figure it out. So until we figure it out, I don't want to walk home I don't want to come home. I sure don't want my VA to have an $8,900 fine, nor do I. There are other things that I can have them do. They are great at Canva. They are great at Excel sheets. They are good at, I have mine. We do AI classes together. We do a lot of different monthly classes together, which we hope to see there.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what I have her do is I tell her what topic I want it to be on. They are so good at the AI stuff. She writes my classes, and I go through and I really, in every resource I use, whether it's Synthesia, farming database, anything, I have her master it. So I master it, she masters it. So I'll do a farming and I'll have her do the same farming just to mirror it, make sure they're the same. So the farming's the most important thing with any marketing that you do, is who you're marketing to. If you're marketing to the wrong person and you send them this beautiful postcard, they can't do anything for you anyway.
Right.
So I have her design my postcards. I have her reach out a lot through Facebook. I have her update my CRM. They're great at that. They're great at the landing pages. So anything that I really have that I want her to do, I will, I'll, and she's really, I've had her for 3 years, so I don't even have her on I don't have to tell her what to do. We have what we work on every day. So know that there are certain virtual assistants that you have to give direction to every day. And there are other ones that you can just say, hey, this is what we do. You get long enough. She's probably better than a marketing director I've ever hired myself at any title company I've been at. For sure.
Yeah. And you have to train all of your people. Like,
so
they have to know how you want it done and the system that you want to use. And so that's just part of going into business for yourself and becoming a business owner. But think about if you took 1 hour to train them every day, like the first week, and you can set them loose for the other 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 hours that day. And then maybe the next week your training is every other day. And then the week after, maybe it's just an hour a week. And they're freeing you up. Like, that's 10 hours a week that you don't have to do stuff, right? And with us being distracted entrepreneurs, honestly, the VA probably gets the stuff done twice as fast as we would.
The thing I want you to remember is there are opposite times than us.
Yeah.
So mine, I know social media content is hard for everybody to keep up with. So mine schedules mine out weeks at a time through Buffer. So I'll just tell Buffer is a system you can use to. Well, that's another class, but you can make it. You can host. You can schedule out your social media for months at a time. But it's a great, throughout the years, my VA has saved me on so many different realms, and she's actually better at stuff than I am because all they've done is work with realtors and investors, and even a lot of companies are using them. So I would suggest if you have the money, at least $40 a week or something to add something like that to what you're doing.
For sure.
But either way, it's one other thing I want to say about the VAs is for my off-market stuff that I did before for my investor stuff, I had 2 different Google numbers. I had one for my residential resale real estate where we would share everything to these groups. And then I had one for my off-market properties where I would, where if they would call in, the phone call, Google Voice would go to her and she would take a message or talk to them and then take a lead that way.
Nice.
So she did a great
job
that way too.
So yeah, just to recap real quick before we go on to anything else. So low-hanging fruit is driving for dollars to find them, bandit signs, Facebook and social media posts. You can hire a VA if you have money. If you only have time, you can start doing things yourself until you start making money, and then you can hire somebody to help. It just really depends on the goals that you want to do and how fast you want to go, right? How fast do you want this big business? Do you want this tiny business? What fits your lifestyle? And go from there.
Free lists.
I was going to say free lists. Yep. So I want to talk. Can we talk about free lists for just a minute?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So free lists. So number one, title companies. As you know, there is RESPA when it comes to agents. So I'm going to put that out there that we can't spend more than $50 on an agent per year. We'll get in trouble. I put that as a title rep. So, but as for lists, a lot of these lists you can pull from the auditor. I can pull them for free as long as there's not cell phone numbers and email addresses because I have to pass the cost on.
Right.
So any of those lists you can get, circle farming from auditor's site. A lot of the websites in the outlying areas has the upcoming sheriff sales, which might be another good low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Free. All this is free. Social media messages are free. Everything I did to build my page, which has 3,300 people on it, was free. And all I did was to build a referral group or a relocation company.
Mm-hmm.
All I did was share off-market stuff, and that is what off-market distressed properties from other people's groups, and that's what brought a lot of investors and a lot of realtors to my page. And you need both to run a successful wholesaling real estate business.
Absolutely.
Or whatever you
want to build.
Whatever your real estate
contact
strategy is.
And the biggest thing is, in my experience, when you first start, you're afraid of criticism, you're afraid of judgment, so you don't really want to say a whole lot. But in all honesty, the more you talk about what you're doing, the more people you're going to come in contact with that either know somebody or is that person themselves or whatever the case, has a family member, somebody that needs some help from somebody like you or us that own a real estate business. So
Anything else you want to touch base on?
Yeah, I know some questions for Stephanie. So, have you done any deals without any of your own money?
I have.
You have. Okay, so this is nothing down deals for you folks. So what tell us about that in a little summary about that deal that you got with none of your own money.
So should I break into the sub two or?
Yeah, whatever it was.
So when I sold real estate, I did a lot of outside the box things, because if you could tell, I'm very outside the box when it comes. Sorry, I'm moving you over. I'm getting close to Annie. I feel like I'm getting a little too close to Jay for a minute. Anyway, so speaking of buying property with other people's money, number one, I did a rent to own deal.
Nice.
So rent to own deals are great for people who have a lot of money, or meaning like who has bad credit but money.
Yep.
Or the owner has a lot of money and would rather get payments than a bulk sum of money. For example, like a seller, I sell my house, I get $100,000. I do rent to own, I get over time.
Yep.
So I actually did two. I did one as the seller, and I did one where we bought it.
So you've done both sides.
So
Heck yeah.
I did a lease option to purchase with one of my biggest investors.
Oh.
And it was, you had to pay, I think we put 20% down.
That sounds right.
20% down, and then we were going to pay on it for 2 years and then refi out of it.
Yep.
So on the seller side, so somebody with less than perfect credit can do that. On the seller side, that was on the buyer side. So I represented somebody who did that. I did not do that myself, but I represented. So that close enough?
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
So on the seller side, I love land. I love tiny homes and I love land.
Yes, you do.
So land to me is something I like to flip. Not during the summer, but let me explain why. I didn't planning with my. Oh, you're good. Not we Stephanie. So but I bought like 4 parcels of quarter-acre parcels.
Mm-hmm.
So one was in Marion, and I bought it for $4,000 because I was going to put a tiny home on it. But then I didn't realize that it wasn't deeded correctly for tiny homes. So I decided. So I put it on the market.
Mm-hmm.
I had someone come to me that wanted to do a land contract on it. So I said, if I'm going to do a land contract, instead of paying $4,000, I want you to pay $8,000.
Yep.
They have been paying $396 on this property for 3 years now.
Nice.
So my little $4,000 what I ended up piece of South and married. They have Ohio
Piece of grass to mow.
on it that nobody want to buy.
Oh, it came with a building.
What's about it is you don't know where you're going to find your people. So
Right.
I listed it with Becky Phillips, one of my friends who lives up by Marion, Prospect. So she brought me an offer, said, hey, these kids' mom live in a mobile home down the street because it's our R2 approved, which is mobile home.
Nice.
You just can't. I didn't go through deed restrictions. So
no.
So they didn't have $8,000. They didn't have the money to buy the lot, but they had monthly payments. So I said, okay, $1,000 down, maybe it was $2,000 down, and then we'll make the monthly payments. So for the last 3 years, they've been paying me $396 a month. And to believe it or not, some months that saved me.
Yeah.
You know, where you're sitting there and you're scrounging because you're in real estate or you're just starting or whatever. It helped me. So instead of having that $4,000 right there, I opted to do $400 a month for 3 years. So
there you go.
Double your money.
Yeah, and I doubled my signing. You know what? They will be paying it off in February, and then they'll be able to buy their mobile home. And nice. There's also a lot of the there's also a lot of the rent to own, a lot of subject twos out there. So there's different ways to get in there if you're spending other people's money. But those are the two that I have done the most.
Okay.
Nice. That's a
Very
good
good.
point that you brought up, though, too, to make sure that it's zoned the way that you need it to be zoned.
Yes.
So if you, right.
Do your due diligence.
Correct. That's exactly what I was going to say. Make sure that if you're doing land, that you make sure that it's zoned the way that you want it to be zoned. Or if you could rezone it, that's a possibility, but you have to figure out what those steps are. And what
Yes.
that's going to cost you.
And that's a simple phone call to the zoning and planning department of that city, village, county, whatever the case may be.
Yes.
And I think with other people's money, what you want people to understand too is that, you know, people that have a lot of money, you know, right now things on the market are sitting a lot longer.
Yes.
You'll see a lot of people that'll do a lease option to purchase with a large buy-in.
Yep.
or a land contract. If you guys don't know what that means, you put a lump sum down and then you just pay monthly until you have the better credit or you can refi out of it.
Right.
Funny story. My parents are from the west side of Columbus, and they bought 6 houses on land contract. This is foul. This is what we were just talking about earlier.
Yeah.
6 houses on land contract for 5 houses, 3 commercial buildings. For probably altogether, they spent about $7,000.
Wow.
Ask me what it's worth now.
Right. That's exactly
1.6 million on land contract. So anybody who don't think that they can do it, my parents were West Side bar owners, and they got to know the right person who had a lot of money on the West Side. They became good friends with, and they said, "Okay, you can have that all on land contract." They put nothing down. One of the properties we're going to sell soon is they bought it for $18,000 from sheriff's sale, land contracted it for 10 years, and now we're going to turn around and sell it for probably 90 to 100. Think about how much money you make like that. So people need to really think about different ways. Just because you don't have the money does not, there's a lot of people out there that have high credit card bills. They're late on their payments. They're scrounging.
Right.
So at that point, there's very outside the box ways to buy it.
Yes.
Very true.
Yes. True.
You guys have done it a few times yourself, right?
Right.
Oh yes.
You find a few your best times doing it.
Well, we actually acquired one house where the seller paid us to take it. It was in the market downturn, so this was like 2010, 11 time frame. And she had a mortgage and we were just taking over her mortgage. That's called a subject to deal. Okay, so we're going to pay her mortgage on her behalf. And what we did was we looked for a lease option buyer to purchase the property because it couldn't be sold outright. She actually owed more than what it was worth at the time. And it turns out, you don't want to do a deal unless you can make money off of it. Okay. So in order for us to make money on this deal, the way that it was structured, the rent that we could get for that property was the same amount as the mortgage. Right. And this borrower needed to move, but was very stressed about her credit being messed up or ruined or her house going into foreclosure. So she agreed to pay $300 a month to us to take over her property that she had been paying $900 a month for months.
For her, because we were picking up the extra 6, but it was a win for us because we were making $300.
Yes, and we also got a lease option payment from the lease option buyer of about $3,500.
So that you'll see that all day long right now and there's actually groups you can join. There are sub-2 groups. There are rent-to-own, there's all kinds of groups out there. But with that being said, be careful because scammers are everywhere.
Scammers are everywhere.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people. I did a closing probably about 4 years ago on a lease option to purchase that had a cloud on title, and he still bought it.
What does that mean, cloud on tile?
So you have an unpaid lien, or it's an environmental lien or an environmental case still open that we have to do something what we call take exception to.
Yeah.
Lenders don't like it. Title, if you're buying it, if I went to go buy it as my next home, they won't let me close because there's a cloud on title. So then some investors will take those because if it's like just a lien or something, they'll just rent it out. So I had one of my investors buy one over in Forest Park. And he, number one, got a huge assignment fee on it and then he ended up putting a renter in there who could not qualify for a mortgage.
Right.
And I think the payment was like $1,200 a month and he was paying $2,200. So that ended up well.
Yeah. That's interesting that you bring that up because we are actually in negotiations on a couple of properties that have cloud on title. There is a big deal between the partners and it's a big fiasco.
Yeah, and it just can't be sold outright
Yes.
at the moment. So it's a time thing that time must pass. Many, 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 many years must pass.
The cloud to disappear on title.
Or the partner to pass away.
Oh, gosh. I don't even know about that. Most of the time, I can't do that for a normal seller. But if you can have,
You're fine.
if you can have someone like Jay and Annie or some other investor that wants to rent it out and it doesn't turn around and flip it. And if it's something that can be fixed, like the environmentally, we lost, it was a $70,000 house. I sent it to you guys over at, I can't remember, down near Groveport. Yeah. So my point is that things like that are also low hanging fruit, because if you have a seller that that you can't sell, then you might be, your price is going to go down, number one, and your pool of buyers just went down like 80%.
Right.
So get to those people, and then, that's just kind of like tax liens or anything else that you do. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I just wanted to say thanks.
Yeah.
For having Stephanie on.
Thank you for
having
fun.
And how can people get a hold of you if they're interested in getting some lists or working with you for marketing?
Or need title.
Yes.
Or need title work. And what states?
Sir?
What states?
My favorite states? Oh, no.
No, what states can you do title in?
It's in Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Colorado, and Florida.
Whoop, whoop.
So if you're an agent or investor in there, if you just want lists or you just want to talk through investing, Jay and I and Annie, our phones are all, talk to these guys. They're the experts. But if you want to talk through title issues or how it works or closing process or 1031 exchanges or anything you want to talk about marketing, low hanging fruit, you can reach me at 614-633-5540. I'm also Stephanie, Maclam on Facebook.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Thank you for
Thanks
coming.
for having us.
Hey, everybody, it's Jay.
This is Annie.
We are so grateful for you joining us on our podcast and listening in and participating. We want to offer you this additional free bonus, and that is joining our Facebook group.
Yes, where we will have other individuals, not just us, but having conversations on all things real estate, and we would love to have you join us. So just click the link below and head on over and join our group.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the other side.